Hey, I'm Delise.
And I'm Jenny.
We know that parenting comes in seasons, and even the smallest wins deserve a happy dance.
Join us as we chat with moms in every stage of the parenting journey, fixing our eyes on Jesus each step of the way.
This is Blessings and Motherhood, because we believe that you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blessings and Motherhood. I am so excited to bring you this conversation with Noble Gibbons. He is the third man who has been on this show, and I just told him when I heard his interview with Robert on Refining Rhetoric, I immediately knew that I didn't care that he was a man. He needs to be on Blessings and Motherhood because he just has so much wisdom and just a very authentic perspective on emotional intelligence that I think we really need to hear. So without any further ado, Noble, welcome to the show.
Delise, I am stoked. I'm so excited to be here. Absolutely love homeschooling families and just so grateful for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for coming. So for those who maybe haven't heard that episode with Robert or don't know anything about being an EQ gangster, as you call it, would you just introduce yourself to our listeners?
So my name is Noble. I have a podcast on YouTube called EQ Gangster, and I discuss all things emotional health, emotional intelligence, a lot of emotional intelligent leadership, and started. My background's military, so I went to college in New York at West Point, and was in the 82nd Airborne Division as an infantry officer, and then got into business and entrepreneurship, and started home. We were married actually without kids for quite a few years, probably 10, 11 years before we had kids. We had kids a little later. Our daughter, she's 17 now, but we started her in foundations at 4 years old. She's got the funny birthday that just made the cutoff, whatever. And now she's a senior. She's in Challenge 4. So literally her just wrapping up her first semester of her last year in high school, and absolutely positively would not have it any other way. And it's been such a blessing. The community of classical conversations and homeschooling at large, right? Maybe you don't do CC. The homeschooling community at large is just very supportive and very helpful. There's exceptions, of course, right? There's pockets, but for by and large, it's been an incredible experience for us. We don't regret any step of the journey. And I will tell you that if God had not caught me when he did with my emotional growth journey, there's 100% guarantee that it would have absolutely positively negatively affected and impacted all of our homeschool experience. It would have affected my wife's homeschool experience. It would have affected my daughter's homeschool experience, and obviously mine, had I still been a 40-year-old emotional 5-year-old.
That is so honest of you to say. And I think I'm really hopeful about this conversation because I'm hoping that we can all begin to view ourselves in those terms, to see the difference between maybe how old we are in annual years and how old we are emotionally. And then also to have that hope and that drive to want to make that gap smaller because it doesn't have to be that way. We can continue to grow, and that's a personal choice that we can make. And I love your testimony, and we're going to dive a little bit more into that. But just the investment that you made in your personal emotional growth has paid off over the years. And so there's hope for us in that area. And I'd love to actually start this conversation from a classical perspective. What have you learned about emotions from a classical standpoint? Are there any parallels or any ways that you kind of apply, starting with the grammar and then the dialectic then the of emotions?
Yeah. Look at you busting out the trivium. Come on, girl. What?
I do my best.
See. I got to bust out my CC gang sign. See. Look at you, Delise, busting out a trivium. What? Okay. So absolutely. In fact, it's so funny that you say that. That's and I'm not trying to be a CC cheesehead, but that is literally the journey. So here's what happened. I yelled at my wife 3 times in 3 weeks after 20 years of marriage. And she said 3 things. Number 1, don't ever do that again. Number 2, you've never done that before, which means number 3, you got issues. And so I was like, snap, went to therapy. The therapist is like, hey, Noble, let me introduce you to 2 revolutionary new concepts called feelings and emotions. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, bro. He said, I know. That's why we're sitting here. And so, and I will tell you, so talking about grammar, like to say, like, I wish I could convey somehow to you, Delise, how clueless like, I'm telling you, I could probably name off probably 4 or 5 emotions at the time. Happy,
Hmm.
sad, mad, angry, and maybe rage were probably literally the only 5 emotion grammar words of emotions that I could at 40 years old, Delise. Not I'm at 5 or 10 or 15 years old. I'm talking 40-year-old grown man, very much into my professional career. Already our daughter was probably 10 at the time. And so I'm telling you, no, she was a little bit younger than that, but I'm telling you, like, like, yes, you know, and that's what I encourage everybody that's maybe clueless like I was, like, you got to start working on the grammar. So, and that's actually, like, no joke, one of the ways to grow your emotional intelligence is to grow your self-awareness. How do you grow your self-awareness? You have to grow your emotional vocabulary. So just literally learning, if you Google emotion wheel, there will be an emotion wheel that pops up. Google the emotion wheel, right? There's lots of them. So pay attention. It's not, they should have, the one I'm talking about has lots of different emotions. It's not all happy ones or all bad ones, or happy ones or all sad ones, whatever. It's a combination of all of them. And it's not exhaustive. The emotion wheel is not exhaustive. So don't think, oh, this is all the emotions there are. It's a great starter. And there's a whole family exercise to talk about this. And let's see, do I talk about it now? The exercise, we'll talk about it later, maybe if you bring it up again. But so you got, well, I'll bring it up now because it perfectly fits the grammar dialectic rhetoric.
Sure.
So one of the family exercises that I recommend to families is this: bust out the emotion wheel, print one out, print a couple out, print one, stick it on your refrigerator, print one out, stick it on your bathroom mirror. Whatever you see grows, whatever you starve dies. Whatever you see grows, whatever you starve dies. The more you see it, the more it'll start to go into your subconscious. You start to see some of these terms and words and stuff. Then, but at family dinner time, or whenever you guys do family meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever, and don't pressure yourself to do it every day. Maybe until you get kind of comfortable with it. Maybe a couple times a week, you sit down. You got the whole family at the dinner table. I'm the dad. Bust out the emotion wheel. And what I'll do is, there's 2 ways you can do this. I'll close my eyes and I can randomly put my finger on the emotion wheel map, land on it, and say, oh, okay, this emotion that I landed on is fulfilled, for example. And then I can say, now, so that's one way you could do it. Or the second way you can do it is actually find the emotion that you are actually feeling in that moment. So 2 ways to do it. One is a little less threatening, and I say threatening. One's a little less maybe intense or vulnerable. One is a little bit more vulnerable and potentially intense, but depending on the emotion that you're feeling in the moment, if you even have the awareness. Because this is what happened to me. The first time we played this exercise with my wife and my daughter, and we only have one kid, I landed on fulfilled. And then you do then the exercise goes like this. The first time I remember feeling fulfilled was, and you try to come up with a time between 0 and like 16, sometime between 0 and high school, those high school years of the first time you felt fulfilled. Then you say the most recent time that I felt fulfilled was, and then you figure out, okay, within the most recent time. That way your brain can start developing a mental file for these different emotions. Now, the first thing, of course, when you land on fulfilled is, this is true story, I didn't know, I had no idea what is that? What does fulfilled even feel like? I don't even know, like, how do you define, right? Define your terms, right? Grammar, like, how do you even define, like, so that's part of the exercise. Like, hey, let's look it up. So, amor, look this up for me. Look it up in the dictionary or on on your phone, whatever. Look up what fulfilled is. So boom, she, so, and which is also part of the learning experience for everybody. So we can all talk from a common perspective. And then no joke, like I had a very difficult time because of my very low EQ and very, very low self-awareness. Like, wow, that's what fulfilled means. Like, man,
Mm.
I have no idea if or when I've ever felt fulfilled. Like right. So that's, I'm telling you, and this is in my 40s, I was doing this, right? And so then boom. So I went through the exercise. Okay, now, Kathy, it's your turn. So now she busts out an emotion again, either a real one or one that, she just closed her eyes. And then it goes to my daughter. Okay, then she does it,
Mhm.
right? And we all go around. Now there's a couple rules of engagement that you got to think about this when you do this. You when you come up with the earliest time that I remember feeling this emotion or the most recent time feeling this emotion, because say, for example, if I landed on anger, let's say I happen to land on anger, I don't want to think of the earliest time that involves someone else sitting at the table,
Right.
because now we're getting into a fight and an argument. That's not the purpose of the exercise. So
Right.
you can't use an example either when the earliest you felt it or the most recent time you felt it if it involves anyone else at the table. So it's
Mm.
got to
Okay.
be involving someone else, something else that does not include anyone at the table, because you don't want it to devolve into a family argument, whatever. So it
Mhm.
keeps it safe for everybody. The other thing is to it's for parents, kind of a reminder is you've got to, if the parents aren't safe with their own big emotions, the kids are going to
Mhm.
know instinctually that the parents aren't going to be safe with their big emotions. So they're not going to be open, because I like to do a real one with my daughter. Like, I want to know, really, for real, huh? I got a
Yeah.
teenager, for real, you know what I'm saying? How she's actually doing, not like, oh, hey, random, now she can randomly pick, it's fine. But if possible, I want her to tell me actually how she's feeling. And I
Mhm.
want her to know that I am safe and present and available and curious about whatever emotion she brings to the table, regardless of the intensity of that particular emotion. And not only am I safe, but one way of showing that I'm safe is I'm not going to react to whatever emotion she brings. I'm going to be cool as a cucumber. I'm going to be curious. Well, hey, I'm also, you said anger. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Validate and affirm. Thank you for sharing that emotion. Now let's hear your example of the earliest time and the most recent time. Okay, well, tell us about that. How did that make you feel, right? And be curious and
Yeah.
not, well, you shouldn't feel angry because I can't believe, right? No, 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 no. Curious, patience, right? And it's a powerful family exercise. And if you notice what I'm doing there, that whole thing, if you keep doing that, you're going to learn more grammar of the different emotions. You're going to then become a little more dialectic because now you're starting to ask questions and stuff, right? And then at some point, right, you do this over a period of months and make this part of your family kind of DNA. Now you can become rhetorical, and now your
Mhm.
family, because think about this, every interaction that your kids have, every interaction that the parents have, they will be able to bring this new level of emotional health and emotional awareness and emotional vocabulary into each of their respective social circles, right? And one of the things I say in my podcast a lot is emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally.
Yes. Yes. That is so good, and it's so true, not to try to claim the emotionally healthy badge, but just to say as a person who has had to invest, and I do believe we all should invest, but it came to my attention quite abruptly. So I had to invest in my own personal emotional intelligence and my health. I've seen the Lord use that journey that I honestly just had to do to keep my own sanity to help so many other people in my lives in my life. And even a couple weeks ago, somebody said, "Hey, I don't know if you know this, but that changed my life, and now I go to therapy, and it just changed the way I look at this, and it changed the way I look at that." And I know you were just telling me your story, but you never know what having just a healthy and accurate emotional vocabulary will do for the people around you. And so it's really a loving pursuit, not only for yourself and for the image of God in you, but also for those around you, and for His glory. I would love for you to back up really quickly, and I think you've hinted at it in a lot of different ways, and just define emotional intelligence for us. What is emotional intelligence at its core?
Yeah, that's great. And that's a big CC violation, right? Start jumping into something and not define the
We
terms.
messed up. It's my fault. I'll take it.
so, so, this is Noble's definition. Okay, and I'm,
Yeah.
I'm a super hardcore practical dude. I am not a big brain, big baller, Aristotle, Plato guy. I'm a very practical. It's got to be applicable, right? So here's Noble's working definition. Now I do executive coaching, so like I work actively daily on this stuff for myself and other people. So here's my definition: the ability to acknowledge, identify, process, and manage not only my emotions, but also the emotions of others in order to make the best decision for all parties
Mm,
involved. Now, that last piece I added for both parents and leaders because our ability to do that aff- affects other people, right? It
mhm,
or inability to do that, right? Affects other people. And oh my gosh, I can't tell you the number of stories, Delise, of well, you know, the consequences of adults being unable to acknowledge, identify, process, and manage their own emotions. You can't. A lot of people, your parents, like, well, how do I help my kid from freaking out and all this kind of stuff? What I'd love to challenge some of those parents is like, what's your emotional stability and emotional ability to acknowledge, identify, process, and manage your own
mm,
emotions, right? Because our emotional stability and or predictability directly affects the emotional environment that our kids grow up in. So
mm,
if they learn to surf in choppy, unpredictable waters with storms that pop up out of nowhere, and it's hard for that kid to balance on that surfboard with very unstable, very choppy water
mhm,
versus a very calm, stable, predictable water environment, right? Emotional environment. Oh, okay. It's do your what do you call it? Bodyboard? Is it a bodyboard? Paddleboard? No, paddleboard.
yeah.
The one you stand up on. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's paddleboard.
Paddleboard, right? You stand up on it and you're doing the whole paddleboard deal. Try to do that, with choppy waters. It's and then
Mm,
we get frustrated at our kid because our waters that we've created in the house are so volatile. So there's a term, a business term we call VUCA, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. We
okay.
use that to define a lot of business environments, but I would argue there's a lot of home environments that match the same thing: volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. And then we get frustrated at our kids. Well, here's a
Mhm,
true story. There is a family that both husband and wife have a very difficult time at acknowledging, identifying, processing, and managing their own emotions, and and consequently, so do their children.
mm,
And there's a lot of expression at the children for their inability to control their own emotions. And I'm looking at the parents like, are you serious? Like you're
mhm,
wondering why your kids have a tough time, and the parents have no concept, no idea that
mm,
100% reason why their kids uh, have these emotional expressions, these, I would argue, kind of unhealthy emotional expressions, is because the parents do it,
hmm,
right? And so we want, biblically, right, the generational curses. Well, it's tough to teach emotional intelligence, emotional health, emotional stability, emotional predictability if we're not, right? Here's a perfect example. My mom, the way we grew up in our house is we would yell and scream at each other. That's to handle conflict. Whoever yelled the
Mm,
loudest won that particular argument. We'd walk in our respective corners of the house, come back an hour later, and literally pretend to leave like nothing happened. I just got
mm.
done verbally assassinating you. I come back an hour like, hey, Delise, hey, girl, so, what are we doing for lunch or dinner? Like, pretend like
Moving on.
nothing happened. And that's
Mm,
that's how I learned. So then, guess what? Guess what I did when I got married? My first year of marriage, my wife, right, upset me. Guess what I did? Well, I'm yelling, screaming at her. That's all I know. I don't know any different. I didn't hang out like that's all I know. And she's like, whoa, whoa, chief. She's like, hey, bro, dude, yelling is the equivalent of crying. It's a form potential, like if uncontrollable crying is the equivalent of yelling. Yelling is equivalent of uncontrollable crying. And she's like, adults don't communicate that way. She said, children do. Children yell and scream at each other. Adults don't do that. And I'm like,
mm,
what? Like, it blew my mind. I had no concept that there were other ways to communicate my emotions other than yelling and screaming. I had no idea. Thank God my wife is much more emotionally healthy and a much more, intelligent than I was, and she was able to communicate her boundaries. So anyway,
mm. Yeah. No, that's so good. Well, and I think someone listening to this conversation might begin to mistake emotional suppression for cultivating a calm environment. Can you dive into some of the differences between those two things? Because you're not saying, oh, your child needs to be in an environment where all the emotions are the same. You're just saying your child needs to be in an environment where all of the emotions are handled properly. So, talk
excellent,
about the difference between those things.
excellent, excellent, excellent. So here's the deal: Gen X and Boomers. It looks like we have greater emotional self management,
Hmm.
which is actually not the case. What we have learned, Gen X and baby boomers, we've just learned to stuff and avoid. And to your point, the ability to suppress stuff and avoid our emotions does not mean we have good EQ. Right?
Right.
That's not the same thing.
Super calm.
Just because I have a PhD in stuffing and avoiding does not mean I have a high EQ. Okay. That's my unhealthy coping mechanism as a result of my inability to acknowledge, identify, process, and manage my own emotions. So
Mm,
now the younger you get, so Gen Y, the millennials, and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the younger you get, the more self-aware the younger generations are.
yeah.
But what they lack is the self-management skills, the emotional self-management, self-regulation skills. But they're more self-aware than Gen X and Gen Z, which is it's a whole generational conversation there. But so to your point, absolutely, I am not saying that emotionally stable and emotionally predictable equals emotional suppression.
Mm,
Absolutely not. It's it's the ability to have the emotional tools to handle any size or type emotions that may be introduced into that individual and or that family, and
mm,
not trip. Right? I'm not going to trip just because Delise is man, Delise is emotionally triggered right now. She's coming at me with an emotional 10. Now, pre EQ, you could come at me, oh, here comes Delise, and I see she is on fire right now. I can see her body posture, she's tense, her eyes are wide open, she's huffing and puffing. I'm seeing the smoke coming out of her ears. She is going to throw down. Now, for me, and I could just see you from a distance coming at me.
mm,
Pre EQ, I would immediately match your 10 and throat punch you before you could unleash on me.
mm.
And you could say, man, Noble, dude, like what? I was going to tell you that, my family's expecting a new kid, or like, oh crap, oh well, my bad. I'm sorry for throat punching you, Delise. Like, I would immediately, everyone else, because of my people pleasing addiction and my low EQ, I would immediately match the emotional state of anyone else around me as a form of well, because I had no ability to control. But now I'm comfortable with my own big intense emotions, strong emotions. So now I'm comfortable with your big intense emotions. So you come at me with an emotional 10, pleasant or unpleasant emotions. I'm cool as a
Mhm.
cucumber. Hey, Delise.
Yeah.
Hey, can I make some observations? Well, yeah, Noble. What's up, Delise? And correct me if I'm wrong, Delise. What I'm observing is maybe some frustration or some anger or some upsetness going on. Am I missing something, or how does that hit you? Am I close, or, well, yeah, Noble, and then you maybe tell me the scenario. Okay, well, man, I'd love to hear what's that scenario like. Tell me about that. It seems like it's
Mm.
really affecting you and impacting you. I'd love to understand kind of what led you to be feeling this way, right? I want to do grace, curiosity, and patience, GPC, right? Not judgment, critique, and condemnation.
Mhm.
Judgment, critique, and condemnation seizes up the engine's ability to run. It seizes up a person's ability to grow. But grace, patience, and curiosity is lubricant, is oil to that engine that will enable it to run and grow.
All right, you guys, it's that time of year again. National Commencement is right around the corner. Mark your calendars for the 2025 National Commencement. It's going to be May 16th through the 17th, 2025 in sunny Southern Pines, North Carolina. Presented by the Classical Conversations Foundation, this is a time for CC families around the nation to celebrate together with fellow families on the homeschooling journey. Plus, there's going to be so much more on the agenda, including a welcome celebration for the graduates and their families, a Q&A time with Lee and Robert, and the 2025 National Memory Master Championship. So if you have a student who's going to graduate in 2025, begin planning to join us in North Carolina for the National Commencement Weekend. Again, those dates are May 16th through 17th, 2025. Registration is open now, so you can learn more at classicalconversationsfoundation.org. We hope to see you there. What a great analogy. I love that. I just wrote it down. I'm like, that's the quote for this episode: grace, curiosity, and patience. Because I think you did a great job of describing the fact that this next generation, the generation that I'm raising and a lot of our listeners are raising, are not bad at identifying emotions. There's a lot of information about that. I loved the exercise that you told us about, and just giving more vocabulary for the different emotions. And I think that's something that we could all implement, today, and that would help us. I think I'm so curious to know some exercises, or even just different approaches or mindsets we can use to help with the regulation side of things. Because knowing that you're angry can only go but so far, and the most popular thing to say, which is very effective, but it's the only thing that's on the market right now, is breathe, deep breath, take a deep breath, and there's a lot of controversial thought about telling a child to take a deep breath. But what are some other ways to approach the regulation side of things once you've acknowledged a feeling?
Excellent. So I use what's called gorilla
Hmm.
aped. Gorilla aped. So GAPED. Gorilla aped. So the first thing I'll do is, and again, this is for me, this is for kids. This works adults and kids. Let's take a few. Oh, so okay, let me back up. So it depends on the scenario. If I'm in the moment, if I'm in the moment, so with that child, for example, validate and affirm. validate and affirm. You don't have to agree with someone's emotional state in order to validate and affirm their emotional state. If their emotions are kicking, right, those chemicals are pumping, what happens is two states of the brain, emotional, logical, two sides of the brain. I mean, yeah. So what happens when we're emotionally triggered, the emotional state takes over control of the logical state of the brain. And so validating and affirming, what that does is, if I tell that my daughter's upset or whatever, there's another tool called name it and tame it. So physiologically, here's what happens. When chemicals pop, which are emotions, when our emotions pop inside of our nervous system, those chemicals pop. If we have not done the work to name, to acknowledge, identify what those emotions are, like what's the name of the grammar of those emotions, and they flow through our nervous system without being labeled, our brain is a miraculous organization and filing system. And anything that's floating around in our nervous system that has not been organized and filed causes stress and anxiety to our nervous system. So when we label, give a name, hey, amor, it seems, again, just an observation, just for my sake, help me understand kind of where you're coming from, just for my sake. It seems like I'm feeling maybe some anger, some frustration, some sadness, maybe some loneliness, maybe some rejection, maybe some discouragement, maybe some disappointment. How did I do? Did I miss any? Or is that accurate, not accurate? Help me understand kind of where you're coming from. So I can literally help my daughter name and tame for her own brain that she may not be able to do in the moment. So I am literally helping her brain physiologically because her brain's like, oh, yep, that's one of them here. Okay, that one goes over here. Yep, anger, okay, frustration, okay, that one goes over here. Sadness, okay, that one goes over here, right? And so I'm helping her brain by validating and affirming those emotions. I'm helping her brain organize and file those emotions so that now she can start calming back down. And then the next step is, so I'll come back to the gorilla ape. The gorilla ape is kind of you can do it in the moment, but the first thing you got to do is a whole validate and affirm. But the next step before I hit the gorilla ape is start to ask logical questions about the emotions. So amor, can you kind of, again, just for my sake here, because I want to make my questions, I don't want to make her think that I'm attacking her by asking these questions. This is not, you have a problem, or no. Help me understand. I don't understand. Help me. I want to understand what you're feeling. So this is not about, you messed up or this is a bad thing. It's a great thing. I love that you're feeling these emotions. This is awesome. I want to better understand kind of what's going on inside of you. So that the anger there, when you said, because anger was one of those that you kind of agreed with there that I had mentioned, can you just kind of help me understand kind of where do you think that's coming from? And so now I'm asking a logical question about her emotions. Well, guess what part of her brain can't answer that question? Her anger. The emotions can't answer that. So now it's got to give some ground back over to the logical side. So now I keep doing grace, patience, and curiosity, grace, patience, and curiosity, asking more and more questions until all of a sudden now, because here's the deal. If you just try to logic emotion, you're going to lose every single time. Try to be, I mean, even for yourself, when you are emotionally hijacked or emotionally triggered, 1 + 1 does not equal 2.
Doesn't matter.
Right? 1 + 1 equals like
whatever.
Rice or tacos. Like there's no logicking when we are emotionally triggered, but yet we try to do it with our kids. Delise, stop being angry. Oh, that's brilliantly effective, right? That's
good luck.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. How's that worked in your life? How's that work for you? Like, oh crap, I did. Oh, let me just stop being. You can't. That's not how it works, right? So when you understand kind of the physiology with some of this, okay, so validate and affirm, Ask logical questions about the emotions, grace, patience, curiosity. Okay, now somewhere in this process, you have to kind of determine this. You can introduce the gorilla aped concept. Gorilla aped is the following. Okay, Delise, I'm literally going to set my emotion. Okay, and maybe you're a kid, maybe you're an adult. Again, this works either way. I'm going to set an alarm for 3 minutes. Amor, 3 minutes, and we're going to write down everything that we're grateful for. That's gorilla. Gorilla is
Mm.
gratitude. Okay, well, I'm thankful for eyebrows. I'm thankful for tattoos. I'm thankful for beards. I'm thankful for big, great Delise smiles. I'm thankful for sunshine. I'm thankful for clouds. I'm thankful for homeschooling. I'm thankful for trees. I'm thankful for the way pine trees smell. I'm thankful for fireplaces. I'm thankful for fire pits, right? Just vomit all the stuff I'm thankful for, which is a muscle, by the way. Now, here's the other thing on gratitude. I heard this from a practicing psychologist, a 40-year practicing psychologist, clinical psychologist. Practicing gratitude 3 days a week, 3 minutes a pop, is the equivalent of taking a pharmaceutical drug for happiness. Facts. Not like, oh, hocus pocus, we should do more
Yeah.
gratitude because like physiologically, gratitude affects our nervous system and our physiological, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being.
Mhm.
Gratitude.
Mhm.
So gorilla, we start with gratitude. So boom, that's already kind of rewiring. It's getting, again, we're also getting the emotions back in balance with our logic side when we're writing down what we're grateful for. Okay, that's the first step. The next one is aped, APED. The first one is acknowledge. Okay, so now, Delise, what I want you to do is we're going to take 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to set the alarm. Literally, I'm going to set an alarm, a watch alarm, because this can be a very scary, intimidating thing. So when we set the alarm,
Mhm.
it's concrete. It provides tight windows and is not like, oh, we're going to sit in the emotional space and feel the vibes. No, no, no. This is not hocus pocus here. This is physiological, real stuff here. Okay, so we're going to take 1 minute, 2 minutes, and I want you to write down every emotion that you're feeling. I don't want you to think about the emotion. I don't want you to process the emotion. I want you to vomit as many emotions as you possibly can. And what is fascinating, Delise, not only for you, because I love doing this exercise with every client that I do this with. I do this with the client or the kid. So when I ask them, it's not just, oh well, again, I'm the Mr.
Right.
EQ. No, no, no. I'm working on this stuff too. I have not arrived. I'm still, maybe I'm emotionally 18 or 19 now. After 5 to 8 years of working on this stuff, I'm still growing. So boom, what's fast, there's a couple nuances that I don't know if so one of the fascinating nuances, there are always more emotions going on in your nervous system than you think you are aware of. Always.
Mhm.
Every time I do this, 100% of the time I've done this exercise with people, they're like, holy cow, I had no idea I have all these emotions going. Okay. It was part of acknowledge. It's great. This is how, right? Next thing I say is, okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to put on a scale from 1 to 10, how intensely are you feeling that particular emotion? 10 being super intense, 1 being not intense. So then they go through and put numbers next to each one. So that's okay. Now I want you to organize all the 10s, all the 9s, all the 8s, all the 7s, all the 6s, all the 5s, from biggest to smallest. Okay. That's all part of the acknowledge piece. Now, if there are any emotions in there that we're not super, and I'll even bust out the emotion wheel to help them do that exercise. Because again,
Mhm.
asking somebody who's not self-aware to write down all their emotions, I would write down like angry. That's the only emotion I even understand right now. So you're gonna spend 2 minutes and I've written down one emotion. So I will use the emotion. We heard Noble use this emotion wheel to help you look at which emotions. And if you need to look up some words, we'll look them up to see if you think,
Mhm.
well, I think I'm also feeling rejected, but I'm not 100% sure what that emotion is. Can we look that up? Yeah, let's look it up. So boom, then they organize. Okay, that's the acknowledge piece. The next one is P, permission to feel. So now I'm going to say, okay, let's start with the 10s, and maybe we don't get to all the 10s, or maybe we get a couple 10s and a couple 9s, but we're going to do this exercise. Also from a clinical practicing psychologist of 40 years, they said this: It takes the nervous system, the body, 60 to 90 seconds to feel the weight of an emotion, the fullness of an emotion
Mm.
through your system. So I set my alarm. I said, okay, Delise, let's start with number one on your list was loneliness. Okay. So number one on your list was loneliness. So I want you to, so I'm going to set my alarm for 90 seconds. Depending on the personality, I won't get into the details on that, but I do 60 or 90, but somewhere in there, 60 to 90 seconds. And I say, okay, we are going to, I want you to grab a pen and paper now, right? Grab a pen and paper, and I want you to label the top of the paper loneliness. And for the next 90 seconds, I want you to feel no feeling but loneliness, nothing but loneliness. So if anger jumps in there, say, hey, anger, I'm going to hit you in a moment, but not right now. Sadness jumps in, hey, sadness, I see you, but just not right now. All you do is loneliness. And I want every thought that comes in your mind about loneliness, just write it down. Just, this is not analysis time. This is not reflect time. This is just vomit time, okay? Because what you're doing is you're giving your body, your head, heart, and body permission to feel that emotion. Imagine each of these emotions is like an emotional knot in your muscle, right? It's a knot in your muscle. Well, if you don't allow your head, heart, and body to process, to acknowledge, identify, process, manage, guess what? It turns into an emotional Charlie horse, and now nothing happens when Noble gets emotionally Charlie horse. Nothing positive or productive. 100% of the time over the course of my life that I've gone to an emotional 10, it's always been downhill. Always, 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to get there. So how do you prevent it? You go through this process. So boom, permission to feel. So then I go, so we just did loneliness. Okay, great job, Delise. Now let's go to the next one, rejection. Okay, because that's a big intense one too. Then we do it for rejection. And then we do a few of them together. Now, okay, so that's the P, permission to feel. Then the E is express through writing, okay, which is journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Again, set an alarm, 1 minute, not like, oh, I'm going to do the story of my life. No. 1 minute, focus, right? 1 minute. And I want you to put down two, but here's what the journaling, the express and writing has to include: thoughts and emotions. I've done research. The research that I have studied is it can't just be thoughts and it can't just be emotions. It has to include thoughts and emotions. That is what bumps up mental and emotional health, is when you include both thoughts and emotions in your journaling. Super interesting. That's the express and writing. Then the last one is D, discuss with somebody that's safe what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. Discuss with somebody that's safe. So gorilla, gratitude, A, acknowledge, P, permission to feel, E, express through writing, D, discuss.
Oh, I love that so much. I have so many thoughts about what you just said. And I'll start with the top. The gratitude thing, you made me think of Philippians 4, which I bring this verse up a lot here on the show, but just to highlight the brilliance of our God, right? He tells you, go ahead, let's dive into these things that you're feeling. You're worried. Don't worry. Just bring it to me, right? You don't need to worry with it, but you can have those thoughts. You can have those needs. Bring them to me, unpack them, and then do that with Thanksgiving. It's that Thanksgiving part, that gratitude piece that's crucial. And it's not the same as whining. Because you're bringing your request to the Lord with thanksgiving, and then He tells you where to place your thoughts. So after you've laid down those thoughts and emotions, He gives you a landing space, which is whatever's good on all of the list that's articulated in Philippians 4. But I love that you're starting there with Thanksgiving. And I think there could be a temptation to hear that example of that exercise and think, okay, well, my child's too young. They don't write yet, or they don't read words yet. But again, I've mentioned this on the show, but pictures are helpful for kids. And you can have the word with a picture and have them go through and pick all the different faces that they're feeling and collect those up. Children can identify a facial expression very, very early on. And so that's another way I'm guessing you could apply that. And then when it comes to journaling, absolutely communicating between the right and the left side of the brain is helpful. And so journaling and writing does that. And I love that you highlighted the fact that it's got to be your thoughts and your emotions coupled. But if they need to draw a picture because they can't write all those words out, let's still try the exercise and we'll grow together as we grow and develop, because this is a journey. It's not a switch that we're flipping and now we're all going to become emotionally elite. So I just I love the way that you describe that and how practical these approaches are, and how honest you are about that journey. What are some resources that you could put into our listeners' hands, maybe to just, if they're feeling overwhelmed and they need to get started, they know, okay, I'm going to print out this emotions wheel, but are there any books or places that you go for just regular encouragement on this topic?
Okay, so great question, and I'm going to hit that in just a second. One thing that I let me address your great point there. How do you do this with young kids, like 3 and under,
Yeah.
4 and under?
Mhm.
So in those scenarios, those families, you tell the kid the emotion that they're feeling in the moment.
Mm.
So when you see your kid expressing an emotion, you quickly tell them, "Hey, you know what? A little Johnny, a little Susie, you're feeling joy. Like that's joy on your face right now. Thanksgiving's coming up, right?
Mhm.
You're excited. That's excitement to see, grandma and grandpa, right? Or, uh,
Yeah.
um, that when you fell over on your face, that's from pain and hurt, right? So
Mhm.
you can build your child's grammar, their vocabulary by catching them in the moment what emotion they're feeling. So absolutely you can start teaching your young kids how to do this along with your great ideas as well. Okay, that's one. The next thing is this: exercise. Circle every time you go through Psalms and Proverbs, circle every time there's any expression of emotion,
Mm.
directly or indirectly, and it will blow your mind on the number of times. Like, the Bible was 100% two-dimensional for me until I did that exercise. I'm like, M, oh my goodness, right? Like, I'm like, you got to be.
Yeah.
I had no. God gave us emotion. If
Mhm.
God created, He gave us emotion. So why on earth do we not take more time, especially when it's something that affects lottie dottie everybody? Emotions affect all of us, but yet we don't spend any time on it. We just, we're at the whims of our emotions. No, emotions. Both are bad, right? The extreme of just getting beat up and being slaves to our emotions is wrong, and also pretending like they don't affect us at all and don't acknowledging them and not acknowledging them is also wrong, right? So emotions are biblical, and that's a great biblical exercise to do going through Psalms and Proverbs. The next thing: how many times does God say, "Do not fear" or "Be strong and courageous"? Why, if emotions aren't a big deal, or emotions, right, are not part of, like, God know, like, do not, he tells us a truckload of times, do not fear
Mhm.
or trust in him or be strong, like zillion times. Well, guess what? He's addressing the emotional state of humans, right? And
Mhm.
then, oh my goodness, how many different scenarios in the Bible does God bring up where emotions were involved in the um in the scenario, right? In the Psalm or even in the Old Testament. I love the Old Testament too. Okay, resources. So a couple things. One, for those that are newer on the journey, I'd recommend my podcast, right? Because I'm from a
Mhm.
very like, I'm like a new person, kind of new person starting out in the grammar phase. I'm a grammar phase guy, right? And
Yeah.
I'm maybe a dialectic guy in my EQ journey, right? Grammar and dialectic. You may want to follow somebody else for if you're like rhetorical already. I may not be your guy, right? If you're, oh, dude, I've been studying EQ for 20 years and I'm God's gift to emotions, I'm probably not your guy. But anyway, so that's one suggestion, recommendation. Another one is, now this lady, I don't know that she loves the Lord, but she is absolutely rhetorical in her EQ
Mm.
emotion stuff. So much so that every post of hers is overwhelming to me because it's so, her insights, like, my head explodes. Like, I can only do like one post a week, even though she posts every day. Her name is Amy Fiedler. F as in Foxtrot, Iedler. And I think it's Amy Fiedler, life coach or something like that. She's on IG and she is fire. Again, I don't know if she's a Christian, but her EQ stuff is ridiculous. Another one is Stephanie Pinto. She specifically does EQ for parents and children. Like that's her specific. I've done a number of interviews with her on her podcast and on my podcast. I've had her too. So Stephanie Pinto, she's from Australia, super lady, absolutely bad to the bone. Also don't know if she loves the Lord. Specifically deals in the EQ for parents and children space. She has a book. I don't remember the name of her book off the top of my head, but if you just search, she's on all the platforms. She's on Instagram. She's on Facebook. Emotionally healthy parenting or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Stephanie Pinto, just look her up. She's fire. Okay, couple of resources. One is called Changes That Heal by Dr. Henry Cloud. Highly strongly recommend that book, Dr. Henry Cloud, Changes That Heal. Another one of his books that is fire, for those who don't habla, is Boundaries. I didn't
Oh,
have
that
any
is amazing.
concept of boundaries prior to 10 years ago when I started researching this stuff. No joke. His book is, and it's be a great read if you can read it before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
with all the emotionally dysfunction families they're going to be getting together, over Thanksgiving. But Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud is another excellent resource. And there's some other great books on EQ 2.0, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is another great book. It kind of gives
Mhm.
an overview of emotional intelligence and has kind of an overview emotional intelligence assessment in there that you can check out as well. So anyway, those are just a handful off the top of my head.
Oh, those are such great recommendations. Yeah, that book Boundaries changed my life. I read it in college. It was required. Praise God. We needed that book. It was so good. And I love that you have also acknowledged the fact that the tens on the positive and the negative side of the emotions can be dangerous. That's something that you highlighted a little bit. And I think we need to acknowledge it. I mean, happy feelings are great, but you've got to have a place to put those happy feelings. You don't want your joy to run away with you in the same way that you don't want your anger to run away with you. And so I'm excited to keep navigating these emotions together. And something we say here on the show, our tagline is that you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. You can have those mixed emotions. And we love to end our show with this question: how can we throw confetti with you today?
That's great. I love it. I would say, again, well, let me do one thing real quick. So there's no such thing as positive or negative emotions. There's no like good or bad. There's
Mm,
no such thing as good or bad emotions. All emotions are from God. It's just a matter of how can we be informed by the emotions that are coming up in the time. So for me, it's like a
that's a good
dashboard,
reframe.
right? It's an emotional dashboard. Is the fuel gauge, is the E on our fuel gauge negative? Is it bad? No, I'm very grateful for that the E on my fuel
Sure.
gauge, right? Because that tells me, oh snap, I need to go hit a gas station, right? So again, all emotions are from God, even the uncomfortable, unpleasant ones, anger,
Mm,
rejection, sadness, loneliness, but they're not bad. So you be careful about conveying that to your kids, right? It's like,
that's
whoa, that's a
good.
bad
Yeah,
emotion. No, 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 that's not a bad emotion. That's a great
unpleasant.
emotion.
Yeah.
That's great data, right? That's great. Hey, I'm glad you're expressing that sadness, that anger, that frustration. Like, let's talk about it, right? So, how to do confetti is like, I would say, man, is take ownership of your journey. And emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. Unaddressed emotional dysfunction does not get better over time. It actually worsens. So take ownership of your emotional growth journey. And I'm telling you, watch what happens to the culture of your family when you, mom and dad, begin to take ownership of your own emotional health and emotional journey, and you get healthier emotionally, of course, spiritually as well. Watch what happens to your children as you get healthier emotionally. That's
Mm,
how we can throw
that's so
confetti.
encouraging. Yes, and thank you. Thank you for giving me better language for that because you're right that he created them all. Some of them are more pleasant than others, but the way we talk about it is crucial. Well, Noble, you've been a joy to talk about. I have no regrets about bringing the third man on this podcast. Can you just tell people your handles one more time so they can find you? And thank you for this conversation.
Yeah. So EQ Gangster is my podcast and YouTube channel. And then Noble Gibbons on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Noble, NobleGibbens, or how you can find me on the social channels. Thank you so much, Delise. You rock like ZZ Top. Totally appreciate you. Thank you for just you're awesome. You're a great host. You're a great host.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been fun. Well, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you did, please make sure to go reach out to Noble. Thank him for just giving so many good practical tips to parents. I really think that these things can change the way that the next generation lives and thinks. And as always, we would love to talk to you over on social media. You can find us at Blessings in Motherhood. Don't forget to give the show 5 stars. That helps people to find it. And we will see you again here very soon. Bye.